All right, folks, so today we're going to do a walk around and talk about all the modifications that I've put on my 2025 Honda 300L Rally. All right, so today we're going to talk about everything that I've put on this bike so far, from the tip to the tail. What have I done to make this bike better for me out there on the road and on the trails? Now, I've already pumped a lot of money into this bike, which is okay because everything that I bought, except maybe a couple things, I feel are pretty justified. So let's get right into it here, starting with the Akrapovic exhaust system. So a lot of these mods, I already have videos up on the channel of installs, maybe my first thoughts. So anytime there's one, I will make sure that I put a card up for you to check it out. And I'll also put links to all of these products down in the description. Okay, so we're gonna do this in a 4-category system. First category is gonna be install difficulty. So for the Akrapovic exhaust system, install, I would say, is a 3 out of 4. I say that as 4 being the easiest, 1 being the most difficult and biggest pain in the ass. It was a bigger pain in the butt to get the stock exhaust off than it was to get this exhaust on. Now keep in mind, this is a slip-on system, not the full exhaust right to the header. So it's gonna be even easier. I'm sure if you had the full system, it'd be a little bit trickier because you'd have to go and take a little bit more plastic off, especially on the Rally, because it is definitely a plastic princess. So next up in the categories is performance. So with performance with this, I would definitely give this again a 3 out of 4, 4 being best, 1 being worst. For the most part, you're getting a lot of aesthetic value with the purchase of an exhaust system like this. It's not a header system. It's supposed to give you a 10% increase. Again, the card's here for it. I actually put a graph in that video that shows the stock versus slip-on system and the output gains that you'll get with it. But for me, I definitely felt a little bit of an increase in torque. It also just sounds really, really good compared to the stock sewing machine exhaust that you get with the 300L Rally. The next thing that makes it a 3 out of 4 is the fact that it saves you a lot of weight. Akrapovic claims that this pipe is 50% lighter than the stock. I do want to say that I feel a difference when I'm out there riding. It's a little bit easier to throw the bike around with the lighter exhaust. All right, so would I buy it again? That's my last category. And I would definitely say 100% I would buy this exhaust system again. To me, it's the best looking, it sounds great, and it gives you that little bit of boost in power at roughly $1,200 Canadian all in and shipped. It was 100% worth it for me. All right, so the next thing we're gonna talk about is the cockpit. I don't really wanna break every piece bit by bit down for this mod. So I'll kind of give it to you as a complete setup, and then I'll put the card up for the video that talks about each individual item in the cockpit, and there'll also be some video to go along with me yakking my mouth here right now. So quick summary here. I went with new bars, put risers on, bash guards, new grips, new levers, and mirrors. So that's 6 items in total. And it made a huge difference in my riding. So install difficulty, I didn't have really any difficulty installing any of this stuff. It was a little bit tedious because it is your cockpit and you wanna make sure you have all your angles right, your levers where they need to be, bars rotated where they feel comfortable. The Barkbuster systems themselves, you do have to make sure that you order a specific mount for tapered bars. But again, I'll put links to this stuff in the description. So install difficulty, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 4 again. Not the easiest thing you could install, but easy enough to give it a 3 out of 4 on the easy side of install. Performance, this is definitely a 4 out of 4. To me, this was the biggest upgrade that I've made for my bike and for my riding since I started riding. So 100%, 4 out of 4. If you are getting into this or you feel like you need an upgrade, this is it. This will help your riding, I think, personally, more than any upgrade will. So value for money, again, 4 out of 4. All these items are gonna add up. They're all relatively inexpensive and paid for. 4 out of 4, easy, 4 out of 4. I'd spend money on this setup again, no problem. That brings me to the last category. Would I buy this again? Not only would I buy this again for my bike, this would be the first thing that I do. It wasn't, I wish it was. I would recommend to any new dual sport rider, do this first. Your confidence will go through the roof. All right, so the next mod and upgrade that I put onto this bike was a GPS unit, a standalone GPS unit. And the beautiful thing about the Honda 300L Rally is that you have that bar at the top of the windshield to mount something like this. I went with the Garmin XT2, but there's a ton of options out there. Installation is, let's say, a 2 out of 4. Not because it's really difficult, but because you have to deal with some wiring. You can buy an OEM Honda wiring harness and clip it right into where your fairings are. I opted not to do that, and what I did is I just wired it directly into the bike. A little bit of a pain in the butt, but all in all, I had no problem doing it. The next thing with this unit specifically is that I had to buy an aftermarket mount. The one you get with it is kind of big and awkward and puts the GPS unit above the windscreen, which to me was a deal breaker. I found a cheap aftermarket bolt-on for about $25 on Amazon. Try to find that one and post a link for you guys as well. So performance and functionality, I'm gonna give this a 2 as well. It's not my favorite GPS unit. As a guy who's coming from the cycling world, I've been able to do so many things with head units and computers to track myself, to plan routes, to keep me on course. And for this one, there's been times where it hasn't failed me, but I've questioned it. And I don't really feel like questioning your GPS system should be something you really ever have to do. I do blame myself a little bit in this realm. If anybody has any advice on this specific unit and how to kind of get it to work for you a little bit better, I feel pretty tech savvy. At times, this thing just kind of throws me for a loop and it just doesn't feel as user-friendly as some other GPS units that I've used in the past. If you got any advice for that, throw a comment in there. I also want to do a review on it, so watch for that coming up. All right, so value for money, again, I'm gonna give this a 2 out of 4. It's expensive. It's, I think, an $800 unit Canadian. At times you can get them on sale. I think I did. This is actually my second one. The back of the unit itself, where it mounts to the bike, cracked and broke, and it can't be replaced. I called Garmin. They were kind enough to send me an entirely new unit. I mean, it was within the 30 days of me purchasing it, but you can't just replace the back of it if it breaks off the mount. You have to get an entirely new GPS unit. And I mean, if you called Garmin and they weren't as good to you as they were to me, you know, if it was past that 30 days, you'd just be stuck with a GPS system that you couldn't mount to your bike, which would be an absolute bummer. So would I buy this again? I'm just gonna come out and say, no, I wouldn't buy this GPS unit again. I'd probably take my time and look into some other options. For me, I've been a Garmin user of so many things for so long, and for me, it just hasn't delivered as much as some of my other Garmin pieces of tech have. So no, I probably wouldn't buy this again. I'd look first. If it turned out it was the best option, maybe I would still pick it up. But now that I look, I do feel like there might be some better options out there. All right, next up, which is a really, really big one, and I've already done a video for it too, is the Garda skid plate and crash bar system. For me, install on this, I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 4. It was definitely fiddly, a lot of moving parts, and just kind of like a pain in the ass in general. I don't wanna blame Garda for that. Kind of wanna blame Honda for that. So much plastic and so many little mounting points on this bike that makes it not only just hard to work on, but if you're gonna start adding more protection to the bike, it's gonna be that much more difficult to get to things when you want to. So for me, 2 out of 4. All right, next up, performance and functionality. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 4. To me, this is the best option out there for crash bars and skid plates for the bike. You get the composite plastic and you get a lower crash bar. Can't complain at all. All right, next up is value for money. The one thing about this is they're out of Poland. So for me, as a Canadian, that's in Europe. So not only is this full kit about $700, once you get it here and pay for duties and shipping, you're looking at a pretty expensive upgrade. I mean, if you have the money and you're looking for kind of really good quality stuff, I'd highly recommend it. But for me, I really had to bite the bullet on this one. And probably because I already tried a set of crash bars and they really let me down, I found the need to find something that I thought would be better. I didn't want to go and buy something again and pay a good chunk of money for something that I was just going to take off the bike anyway. So for me, 2 out of 4 for value for your money. So would I buy this again? I would buy this again because for me, I can't find anything else that does what this setup does. I know they're out there and I know they're relatively the same amount of money, but the look that you get with the Garda system, I feel like is unmatched. If you're gonna spend a bunch of money, you might as well spend a little bit more and get your bike to look better. Next up is the Rally Raid rear rack for the bike. This is a really easy install. This is a 4 out of 4. You just take out the stock bolts that hold the rear fender on, and then there's spacers. Everything's really, really well labeled, and this thing goes on in 10 minutes. I often take it off and put it back on depending on what kind of riding I'm doing, and it's no trouble at all, no inconvenience whatsoever. So 4 out of 4 for installation. Performance and function, it really does what it's supposed to do. Some other racks, like a tubed style, this one's one thin sheet. It's really close to the bike. It really hugs the fender, gives you a really, really good looking rack, and it's also really strong. So I'm gonna give that a 4 out of 4 for performance and function. Value for money, I believe this was about $200. Again, not a lot of money. It did have to come from Europe. A couple of the parts that I've ordered for this bike had to come from Europe. So you have to pay those duties, that shipping, but nothing terrible. Again, kind of like the Garda system, it's the right fit for me. Might not be for you, but to me, it makes the bike look better. Doesn't get in my way, which again, is something I've said before in previous videos. If something gets in your way that's supposed to be helping you, to me, it's not an upgrade, it's a downgrade. So this, definite upgrade. I give this a 4 for 4 in regards to value for your money. So lastly, would I buy it again? I would definitely buy this again. To me, there's no other rack out there that looks as good and does its job. All right, so we got 3 more left. Third last being foot peg upgrade. I went with a cheap pair of Amazon foot pegs And they have good reviews, but I've also heard other people online talk about how they don't really enjoy them. So first out of the gate, install was fine. Foot pegs are really, really easy to install. They came with springs that I didn't use. I found the springs were too tight, so I used the stock springs. They also come with the little metal cleats, and they all needed a good tightening. And this is where I read on some of the reviews that they fall out on the first ride. So because I read those reviews, I took them all out, put some Loctite on them, and then tighten them all up. So an easy 4 out of 4 installation. No problem at all. Typical foot peg install. So performance and functionality, they serve their purpose. I have found that the little inserts do strip out. You can tighten them, but again, if you tighten them too much, they just start to strip out. So I do feel like eventually they're just gonna start to fall out, regardless if I use Loctite or not, because they're just gonna get stripped, and then I'm gonna have to replace foot pegs altogether. But for about 35 bucks, I'm not super concerned. Maybe that's something I can upgrade and pay a little bit more and get some tusks or something down the road. But for now, they're serving their purpose just fine. But I do know I'm gonna have to replace them at some point. And so for that reason, I'm gonna give them a 2 out of 4. Value for money, again, I'm gonna give it a 2 for the fact that they are $35, super cheap, but I also feel like the quality isn't the best and they're gonna have to be replaced. So 2 out of 4 for value for money. Would I buy them again? Probably not. Just knowing what I know now, knowing that eventually I'm gonna have to replace them. Next time, I'll go with a better quality pair, and I know I won't have to worry about them down the road. So next on the list is the Achereby's clutch and engine cover. For these, I'm gonna say a 2 out of 4 for install. And again, it's one of those things where if this was just the L, install would be a 4 out of 4 because you're dealing with all the plastic with the Honda 300L Rally. Install was relatively easy. Didn't feel like there was any tricks. They're super straightforward. They're molded right to the bike. So you knew right away where they were supposed to go and what you were doing. But because you had to deal with all the plastic on the Rally, it made it that much bigger of a pain in the butt for the Rally. So I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 4. So performance and function, I'm gonna split it right down the middle again and give it a 2 out of 4. You know, these are really doing what they're supposed to do, so I would love to give them a 4 out of 4. But one thing that really bugs me about this is that on the oil change side, there's no spot for me to get to the filter on the bike. So I know come oil change time, I'm gonna have to take all the plastic off my bike, including the Garda skid plate, to get to the engine cover, to take the engine cover off in order to change my oil filter, which is a huge, enormous pain in the ass. So value for money, to me, these aren't bad. I'm gonna give these a 3 out of 4. Another one of these kind of inexpensive upgrades, all plastic, something I couldn't find in Canada. So I actually had to order these from Revzilla. It cost me a little bit more money in shipping. You are gonna be able to prevent any damage or scuffing, really cosmetically to the bike, which again, if that's something you're into, like myself, you know, that's gonna make this that 4-star. That's a big deal to you. So for me, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 4. So would I buy these again? This is one of the ones that I'm kind of like on the fence about. I really do like what they do for the bike. To me, they don't seem like they're worth the hassle of having to take them off every time you do service on the bike or any type of maintenance. I haven't had to do that yet. I got these when I did my season-ending oil change, but I can almost guarantee that when I have to start working on the bike later, I'm gonna be cursing their name. Who knows, maybe they'll just stay off unless I can find some way to mod them so I can get this in parts. So next thing I did to the bike was I got rid of the big whale tail and I got small little license plate holder and I tucked that tail right up. That was an Amazon job. I'll post a link to that as well, but that was a pretty easy install. I'm gonna give that a 3 out of 4. There's even an option with this one for wiring for the license plate that clipped right into the existing wiring harness, which was great. Performance, I mean, not really any performance gains, so I don't really even know how to rate this. I got rid of the tail, which can, you know, bounce around, but for me, that's a 3 out of 4 for performance. For me, it's just more aesthetics, makes the bike look better. Value for money, I mean, I got rid of a big chunk of the bike and I think I paid like 20 bucks for this. So I'd say 4 out of 4 for value for your money. Something that's easy to pick up. It was a no-brainer. But the fact that I don't even remember how much money it cost lets me know that it was inexpensive. So would I buy it again? Yes, absolutely. The bike looks better, less parts, less weight, less things to break, and an easy install. So why not? Let's do it again. All right, so the next thing that I'm gonna talk about is tires. I still have yet to upgrade my front tire. There's a video coming on that. I got a Pirelli MT21 coming that I'm gonna change before my trip to the West Coast here. It's coming up in March. But what I did do is I replaced my back stock tire with a Dunlop D606. And there was huge improvements instantly for me. I definitely noticed the tire doing its job way better than the stock tire did. When I started doing research on this bike, people were saying that the stock tires were junk. I took that with a grain of salt, but now I realize it's definitely true. Don't stick with the stock tires for too long. Upgrade, you'll thank yourself. So for me, install, I didn't install the tire, so I can't speak to it, but I have heard installing tires are gonna be a huge pain in the ass. I will be installing that MT21, so I'm probably gonna give this a 1 out of 4. I'll get back to you on that. I'll give you an update. Maybe it won't be a 1 out of 4, but I feel like it won't be a 3. So let's say like highest 2. I got my tire installed at the local moto shop here in town. Performance, 4 out of 4, 100%. You're not paying a ton of money for a tire, and for the noticeable gains that I got out of this tire compared to the stock tire, 100% worth it, 4 out of 4. Value for money, again, relatively inexpensive as far as upgrades go. It is something you're gonna have to upgrade over and over and over again if you keep your bike for a long time, but at about $200 Canadian, you can swallow a tire if it's gonna help you as much as this one helped me. Lastly, would I buy it again? 100%, totally worth it. The D606 is the tire that I can speak to. I know there's a ton of other ones out there. Rear tire, get rid of the stock tires in general, get yourself new tires, worth the upgrade, would definitely do it again. All right, so we've talked about mods, we've talked about all the things that I've put on the bike. One thing that I really want to upgrade still on this bike is the suspension. Probably go with a Rally Raid rear shock and then upgrade the front suspension later. I have definitely noticed how soft the rear shock is, especially on whoops and rhythm sections when we're riding lots of trails. It's one area that I've got confident in riding, but I find when I'm out with my buddies, they can be so much faster than me on there. My mind just gets eaten up by those whoops. So I'm really looking forward to that upgrade. Something that's going to come down the road as an install and review for you guys as well. And speaking of installs, I have 2 videos here for you guys to check out. This one here is on the Garda skid plate and crash bar system. And this one here will be for the Akrapovic exhaust system that I installed, so check that one out too. I'll see you guys in the next video.